decision even when the wrong decisions are made. Now, and there's still some people say, well, no, if it's legal, that means we've endorsed it. No, we don't. We don't endorse it. What about on religion? We're pretty good on religious values. Some people choose no religion. Some people pick different ones, 10, 20, 30, 50 different kind of religions. But we generally protect that and say that's your own choice. You can make your own choice. We are not judgmental about that. And we're pretty good, but we're getting, we're getting sloppy on it is protect your intellectual freedoms. Now that they want to regulate the internet and arrest people for saying things, this is where we're going to have to be very careful, because when the state feels like they're under attack, probably the first freedom they get rid of is freedom of speech. Ideas, spreading ideas. That is why our ideological revolution has to pursue, and it has to pursue quickly before they take away our ability to communicate. But it's the ideas that changes the world, so that is why the First Amendment is so crucially important. In the second area that we have a great deal to be concerned about, and that is economics. We're in an economic mess. It's very, very bad. I am convinced it's worse than anything that we faced, worse than the Great Depression, worse than when we're in major wars, because the fundamentals, the foundation of our economic system, the understanding of property rights, the understanding of monetary policy has so eroded that the bubble that still exists is so huge, and it's worldwide. So when we see hints of this breaking apart, in Europe, or what's going to happen, to the euro and the European community, and what's going to happen to us. Well, generally so far, with our Federal Reserve and our Treasury, and so far our Congress, it says, well, we better be in Europe because our bank's over there, and we don't want to let everybody fail, so we have to keep bailing them out. And I would say that eventually is going to bring the downfall of the dollar and the downfall of the economy, which means that there will be more excuses for them to crack the whip and crack down on our civil liberties. This is why understanding civil liberties, individual rights, are so crucial in tying it in to monetary policy and property rights, because we cannot allow that to happen. The economic system today is based on debt. For too long, what we have done is we've bailed out every attempt for the market to correct the mistakes made, especially since 1971. We've always jumped in and interfered. That is, we spent more money, printed more money, lowered the interest rates, and there seemed to always be a response. Even though the statistics now are showing how devastating this economy and destruction of currency is. The average American family's losing. They know it. It's on the news this week, significantly. And that is a predictable event. Austrian economics teaches that if a government deliberately devalues and destroys the value of a currency, it will destroy the middle class, and the wealth will gravitate to the wealthy. That is the reason monetary policy is important, and the reason that ultimately we get rid of the Fed. Some people ask, well, haven't we had a accumulation of wealth in the last several decades? Some people have gotten wealthier, but the average person hasn't. And the middle class is smaller, is especially smaller in these past 5 years. So you print money, and even if they get a GDP to go up, it's represented by the government spending more money on cruise missiles or something. And that doesn't help you. It doesn't help your income. It doesn't help keep prices down. It doesn't help you one bit. And it is so destructive because when the trouble comes and the Fed say, we are all wise, we know what interest rates should be, we know what the cost of money should be, and therefore we're going to make it free. And guess who qualifies? The big banks. And they get free money and they loan it back to the governments and they buy the bonds, finance the political system, and they make a lot of money. But what happens to the average person who decides they need to be frugal? Times are tough. Spend less, save more, be prepared, take care of ourselves, act responsibly. Guess what? Instead of getting a market rate of interest, which very well could be 5, 6, 7, 8%, they get 1% or nothing. So it is so unfair, and once again, it is biased against the people, protects the big banks, the big corporations, and the politicians. In the other area that we have created a lot of problems for ourselves, but we're in the midst of a transition, and that is on foreign affairs. We're spread too far around the world. We're in 140 countries. We have 900 bases. They're preparing right now to go into Syria, and it probably won't be too long that we may well be in Iran. We don't need another war. We need less wars, and we need to quit. One of the strongest things that we have to deal with, of course, is the foreign policy as a consequence of the tremendous fear about being attacked by a terrorist. Now, the terrorism is a serious subject to deal with, and if you understand the blowback mechanism, of course, we think we can do a whole lot to reduce the threat of terrorism. But right now, the threat of any of us being killed by terrorists is about 1 in 25 million. The odds of getting killed by a car is 1 in 19,000. Lightning, 1 in about 5 million. But guess what? If you're in the military and you have to go over and get involved in a shooting battle to save the world for democracy, make the world safe for democracy, and bring peace and tranquility to these countries, guess what? The estimates are, and there's no precise number, but it's somewhere between 2 and 20 per 100 people, like 2% to 20%, that you will be killed by friendly fire. What a tragedy. And they think that we have to have a drone warfare, constant. Every country, anybody who suggests they dislike us will try to send out drone missiles. And guess what? That does not win friends. It does not help us in any way whatsoever. It has been said that they were very pleased that we were over there. It was much easier killing us over there than needing to come over here where the Second Amendment is still alive and well. Now, in talking about foreign policy like this and emphasizing blowback, somebody rather nastily said the other day on the internet, and they said, oh yeah, if those Paul peoples had been in charge, Osama bin Laden would still be alive. But you know what I think the answer is? So would the 3,000 people from 9/11 be alive. And so would the 8,500 Americans who were killed in Iraq and Afghanistan. They would be alive as well. And Also, those 44,000 military personnel who have come back severely injured, they would not be suffering those consequences, and we wouldn't have hundreds of thousands suffering from post-traumatic stress syndrome as well as brain injuries. So I would say if you take that and add in $4 trillion, our side wins that argument by a long shot. Of course, if we had our way and we removed these dangers, of course, a president would not be able to assassinate anybody, especially never an American citizen. Then, of course, if we have our way, we would repeal the provision in the National Defense Authorization Act. This whole idea that they've gone all the way back to 1215 to mess around with the progress of liberty and repeal habeas corpus by saying that you don't have any right of due process and the military can arrest us and put in private prisons and never get a trial. There's something very un-American about that, let me tell you. Now, there was, when that bill was being debated in the Senate, there was a provision in there so that actually it looked like it was going to get passed. The provision said that if we as an American citizen were arrested and we were tried and found innocent in a jury trial, they still claimed that they could put us away forever and held indefinitely in detention after finding it. But it didn't get that bad. It's still bad, but there was a senator, I can't think of his name, I think he was from Kentucky, and he was able to stop that. Once it got out on the table, they said, oh, we didn't know that was in there. Of course, that's always possible because they don't have the vaguest idea what they're voting on most of the time. That is a problem, you know. There's a Read the Bills Act over there, and of course, I think that's a proper thing to do. You ought to read the bill. But you know, I have to admit, I haven't read all those bills. I mean, if they're 1,000 pages long, my staff has good instructions. They say they have an easy job. They say all they have to do is show me if it's unconstitutional. So a lot of times they only have to read the first page. And if there was ever a time if I wasn't well informed or I came quickly and thought, well, I haven't thought this through. I am convinced it's worse than anything that we faced, worse than the Great Depression, worse than when we're in major wars, because the fundamentals, the foundation of our economic system, the understanding of property rights, the understanding of monetary policy has so eroded that the bubble that still exists is so huge and it's worldwide. So when we see the internet and arrest people for saying things, this is where we're going to have to be very careful, because when the state feels like they're under attack, probably the first freedom they get rid of is freedom of speech. Ideas, spreading ideas. That is why our ideological revolution has to pursue, and it has to pursue quickly before they take away our ability to communicate. But it's the ideas that changes the decision, even when the wrong decisions are made. Now, and there's still some people say, well, no, if it's legal, that means we've endorsed it. No, we don't. We don't endorse it. What about on religion? We're pretty good on religious values. Some people choose no religion. Some people world. So that is why the First Amendment is so crucially important. In the second area that we have a great deal to be concerned about, and that is economics. We're in an economic mess. It's very, very bad. We'll pick different ones, 10, 20, 30, 50 different kind of religions. But we generally protect that and say that's your own choice. You can make your own choice. We are not judgmental about that. And we're pretty good, but we're getting, we're getting sloppy on it to protect your intellectual freedoms. Now that they want to regulate